Okay, well, I hope everybody had a great holiday and that 2014 is off to a good start for you all. We did run this report generation training back in December, but obviously not everybody was able to attend that, so we thought we'd run it again. We had pretty good participation the last time, a lot of good questions, so hopefully this will be a useful session for those of you that are on here today. As always, we definitely want to make this interactive, so if you have questions throughout, you can just type those into the questions box that you have access to, and Stan will kind of pause, every once in a while, and we'll get those questions answered. So definitely don't be shy. With that, I think we'll turn things over to Stan and get started.
Okay, Mo, thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. Basically, I'm going to go over a quick review of what we did on the last tutorial back in part 3. Actually, it was 2 sessions ago. And basically, what we talked about was, talking about the baseline readings. And we also talked about, let me move this out of the way. We also talked about all these different tabs that we actually have within DMS, where all the information actually lies. When you actually look at the record information, talked about the images that are attached to these records, what the history tab does and how it actually affects the chart, and we just discussed the alarms, basically how to set some alarms for those baseline readings that you actually take. And then finally we talked about the version, where how DMS actually checks our website and actually try to match up the DMS version that we have on our website and compare it to the version that you actually have on your computer. So in this session, it's going to be kind of long. It's going to probably push 45 minutes to an hour. But I actually put this at the end of our session here, of all the sessions that we actually have, because this is where everything is come together, and you can actually present this stuff to your upper management, to your bosses, to get whatever it is that you need to be, whatever part that needs to be replaced. So in DMS will know exactly which report to bring up, because it'll know exactly where you are within your hierarchy. Okay, so right now I have one of my points highlighted underneath my bearing application over here. So it automatically brings up my bearing reports. So these are the common reports that we can actually generate. Now, if I come down here to my other application, let's say electrical, it senses that I'm in the electrical application level, so it'll bring up the reports I can generate for my electrical application. So again, DMS will know exactly where you are within the hierarchy to bring up the correct reports for you to generate. Now, the first one I'm going to go through is our bearing reports. These are one of the most common reports that a lot of people actually use out of DMS, and I'm going to talk about what each report does for you guys. So the first one that we actually have is our alarm report. And basically what this alarm report does, it actually, if you look over here in underneath your group level, depending on where you actually have it set up, if you look at the points currently in, the alarm report will actually look into this area right here. And this is basically where all your alarms out of your group will be residing. So we actually have 2 parts. We got a low or a high alarm, and then we just have the high alarm only area. So basically, out of 14 points that we actually have, 9 of them are actually in the low or high alarm state. And then out of the 9 of the alarms, 7 of them are actually in high alarms. So if we open this up, it'll give us a list of all the machines that we actually have. And if we go a little bit further, it'll give us the description of the bearing name, and it'll give us a red flag telling us that we actually got a high alarm state. And it'll give us the date and time stamp for that. So the alarm report will actually look into this area of points currently in and look at all the alarms that we actually have in there, and it'll extract it and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. So in order for this to work correctly, you just highlight the group, highlight the alarm report, and then over here to your right, you got to generate select report. So if we hit this, it'll ask us where do we want to place this report, and then you have a file name. And I'm going to create this as alarm 2. And then once you're finished, just hit OK. It will extract all the information out and put into an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll tell you it's been created. So you just hit OK. You come over here to your alarm report, and this is what the alarm report actually looks like. It'll give you a list of all the problems in that group and put into a nice little spreadsheet. And it'll give you the description of the machine, the bearing name. Here's the point ID that's within there in that group. And it'll give you the date and time stamp of when that actually hit that alarm. And then over here, it'll give you the frequency that you actually have that you recorded on that last recording. And it'll give you the dB value of that problem, the sensitivity value, and then you actually have your low alarm state and high alarm state. So if we look at the first one, we have 33 dBs. And if we look over here on our high alarm state, anything that goes above 23 dBs, it'll pop up as a red flag or a high alarm status. And then obviously down here for the yellow flags, typically anything that goes above 8 decibels above its original baseline, it'll pop up as yellow flag telling us that we have a lubrication problem. Usually when it comes to bearings and you got a red flag, it's usually we have it set up 16 decibels above its original baseline reading. Basically anything that hits that mark basically gives us a glimpse telling us that we got starting stages of possible physical damage of that bearing. So if we pull that bearing apart and actually look at it with our own eyes, we can possibly see the flaking, the spalling, or even the flat spots on the bearing itself. So when we see this stuff, we will obviously go back in there with these high alarms and obviously with the low alarms and try to lubricate that bearing and see if we can actually drop these dB values at all. And obviously with these high alarm states, we will probably try to nurse that until our next scheduled downtime. And if we're actually testing this, let's say every 2 months, we might go in here on a couple of them and test maybe every week or every 2 weeks just to make sure that this dB value doesn't go any higher. If it does, we can try to escalate the call, and you got the evidence to show to your bosses what is actually happening to that bearing so that you guys can try to shut down that machine and change out that bearing. Now, the other report that we actually have is called our bearing lube report. This is very similar to our alarm report, except that it actually has a couple new columns associated with this. Okay, we basically highlight our group name again, highlight the report that we want, the bearing lube route, and then we basically hit the generate select report, and then you go through the same process again. And once you're all done, just hit OK. And I actually have a bearing lube report here ready for you guys. Again, it looks very similar to the alarm report that I just created earlier, just a few moments ago, but you can see over here we actually have 2 new columns. We have a type of lube and if it's actually been lubricated. Okay, if it's been lubricated, you can actually say, instead of being no, you can type in yes, saying that it was lubricated when you actually took this reading. And then basically on the type of lube, you can basically tell in this report what type of grease you were using when you were doing the lubrication, so you can keep track of the type of grease that you're actually using for this particular bearing. Again, you got the machine name, you got the bearing names right here, the date that actually hit the alarms, and then you got the frequency that you actually had your ultraprobe set at, the dB values, and so on. And then obviously you got the low and high alarms here. So it's very similar to the alarm report, but it gives you a couple more options to use to present to your bosses. The next report that we actually have is our master route report. And basically what this does, it will actually give us a list of every single point that we have within a particular group, and it will actually give you a state, alarm state saying if it's okay or if it has a low alarm or a high alarm. And you also have a if it's been lubricated column, and we also have a comments column. So you can actually type in whatever it is that you want in here to describe or say whatever it is that you want for this one particular point. Now, within Excel, you have up to 255 characters that you can actually type within these cells in here. So you can make it fairly long, but again, bear in mind that you actually only have 255 characters to use to say whatever it is that you want to say within these cells. So it's a little bit more condensed, and basically it'll give you all the names of those particular points within that group, and it'll give you an alarm state. Even if it's okay, it'll say if it's okay or not. So there's a couple other options that you can use in there besides just the alarm and loop report. The best one that everybody really likes out of this report for the bearings is the 4-pick report. And basically what this report is, you actually have the ability to put 4 pictures within this report. And the beauty of this report is that you can actually associate 4 sound files with this report. So if you're doing a bearing 4-pick report, you can show pictures of the bearing, show the name tag of the bearing, and so on. And then with the sounds, you can actually associate the baseline reading when it was replaced. You can actually listen to it when it was brand new. And then the next 3 sound files for that bearing, you can hear the progression of the bearing going bad. This is a very powerful report that you guys can actually put together, email it to your bosses if you want to, show them what's going on, and then he can actually listen to the progression of the bearing going bad. So he has something to look at and something to listen to, so that he understands what you guys are actually trying to say, saying that there's something going on with this one particular bearing. We need to check it out, or if we got to replace it. So we're going to highlight this 4-pick report. We're going to generate that report. Again, create a name for it, 4-pick. Hit OK. Now, when we hit OK, it doesn't automatically extract all the information out and put it into this report. What will happen is it'll pop up with another window. Now, it's going to give you a list of all those historical records for every single point or bearing that you actually have in here. And all we have to do is highlight one of the dates that we want. If I go into my tail, point 001, highlight this, and if there's any pictures associated with this historical record and I had it attached to that record, it will be displayed over here. And if there's any sound files associated with this historical record, it will be displayed in here. So now all we have to do is pick and choose the report, the pictures that we want for this report. So if I want, let's say the first thing I want to do is put my line chart in there. Again, you have 4 areas, 4 pictures that you can place in here, and you got to remember that the first 2 pictures that you place in here, the first 2 slots, will be the bigger of the 4 pictures in this report. So numbers 3 and 4 slot will be the smaller of the 4, excuse me. Now over here, we can actually play the clip and listen to it if we want, and make sure that it is the sound clip that we want for this report. If it is, then you can then just pick clip 1, clip 2. I'm going to say clip 2 over here. You can see that the sound file is actually associated in this slot number 2 here. So I'm going to say, let me pick a couple other ones. I'm going to use this FFT screen for my 15,000. I'm going to put this over in here in image number 2. And you just keep doing this until you fill up the slots, or if you don't have to fill in all the slots if you want to. It just gives you the option of actually filling them all in. So I'll take a picture of myself and one of our guys out in the field. And we'll take a picture of this one right here, I guess. Now, once you're all done, you just basically say OK, and then at that point, it will extract all the information that you actually plugged into this area and put it into a spreadsheet. So I'm just going to cancel that and show you what it actually looks like. And this is what the 4-pick report actually looks like. Here's my 4 images. Okay. Here's the information that we pulled out from that one record, basically your baseline reading, test results if you actually changed it, saying if it's been lubricated or if you got some kind of vibration. You can also put in a temperature reading in there. RPM speed you can actually place in there also if you wanted to. We also have our sound files down here. Okay. Now, you don't need Spectralizer to play these sound files. Okay. So if your bosses, if you want to show them this report, he doesn't need Spectralizer on his computer to play these sound files. If he hits play, and if he has Windows, it will actually play it through your Windows Media Player. Okay, I got mine on mute because it's going to flood my mic here on my head. So, and you can actually hit play on every single one of these and hear the progression of that bad bearing going bad. So this first one would be your baseline reading typically, and then obviously this last one would be the last reading that you took, and if it was a really rough sound, you can actually have him play that at the end, and you can actually hear the progression of the sound getting worse over time. And then you got a comments box in here. You can type away what you want to say in here. You can put in the corrective action suggestion in there, the repair date, the repairs, who performed the repairs, what kind of repairs being performed, excuse me, and then who actually repaired that. So you can actually put that together and actually present that, or send it, by email if you want, to your bosses and say what's going on. So he actually has something to look at and something to listen to. And then finally, we have an everything report. Now, it is what it says it is, everything. Basically, it's going to pull out every single little information that you have collected over time and put it into a spreadsheet. Now, it's great, but you also want to make sure excuse me, that you have enough paper. If you're going to print this out in your printer, you want to make sure that you have enough paper in there, because it is everything that you can possibly think of will be in this report. And I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Again, just highlight the area that you want, hit the everything report, generate it, and then this is what it actually looks like. Okay, this is a kind of small database. It's basically from my Toyota plant, just out of one group. But you can actually see, just out of this one page, this is just point number one. Okay, it's going to give you every little thing that you can possibly think of that we actually have attached: images, sound files, obviously the historical dates in here in time, the dB values over time, the frequencies, what type of mode, if you were in real time or peak hold, and so on. Everything that you can possibly think of. And this is just one test point. Okay, RPM speeds, and then obviously we can scroll down further and you can see that there's a lot of information. This is very overwhelming. I don't advise you to print this out or even email this to your bosses, because they're going to be scratching their heads trying to figure out what the heck you're trying to send them or trying to say to these guys. So this is basically just for yourself, for your own use, for information later on in the future, to compare stuff if you want to. Not many people use this, but some of you guys do. So you can actually, basically you can use this for future references if you like. But not many people use it, but some of them you guys, some of you guys do. So I just want to show you what it actually looks like. It is kind of overwhelming when you first do it for the first time. It will be a little bit confusing, but if you understand what you're looking for, then you'll understand exactly what you're looking at. And then that's basically it for the bearing application. The other reports that we have for the other application, before I actually pass it on to Maureen to ask for any questions, the electrical application level, the reports in there, they're basically the same thing what you actually see for your bearings. You got an alarm report, you got a 4-pick report. Again, you can put 4 images with 4 sound files in there, and then you got an everything report. Same thing for the generic. You basically got an alarm report, and this one here, you got a master route report, so you can, if you have information for your for this one particular plant or this one group area, it'll give you a list of all the test points that are in there, and basically tells you if you're in an alarm state, it's of low, high, or even okay. And then obviously you got the everything report in there. The everything report will be in every single application level, right along with the alarm report. Same thing with the valves. You just basically just got an alarm report and then an everything report. Now, before I go into the leak and steam reports, I'm actually going to go to Maureen and see if you guys actually have any questions out there concerning what I just explained.
Okay, so far no specific questions to the bearing reports that you just showed, but I did want to mention, because I've been asked, we are recording this, so this will be up on the website just like we've got the previous training sessions that Stan has done up there. So if you need to digest this, a couple more times, this will be available for you guys in the tutorial section of our website. So I meant to mention that at the beginning, but I did not. So, but definitely feel free. Again, you see Stan is pausing for these questions. So if you got them, send them in, and we'll get them answered. But Stan, I think we're ready for you to keep on moving.
Okay. So the other reports that we actually have, the most common ones, we actually have, before I actually go into the leaks, I'm going to go into STEAM real quick. In the STEAM report that we actually have, we have the alarm reports, which is common for all of the applications. Obviously, the everything report is actually in there. And then we actually have a STEAM report. Now, I can't remember because this is actually a test version I actually have on my computer. I can't remember if the version of 5.2.31 actually has this report yet. But this is a very new, brand new report. It actually looks very similar to the compressed gas and the compressed air report that we actually have for the leak application. Basically what this report does, it will actually give us a dollar value for each trap that is bad. So if it is leaking or if it's blowing through, we have a formula that will actually crunch up the numbers and spit out a dollar value of how much you guys are actually losing in steam per year. Now, in order for this report to work correctly, you have to know what the inlet and outlet temperatures are on that steam trap, and know what the orifice size is for that trap. And then lastly, know, if you're in the U.S., know how much you guys are actually paying per 1,000 pounds of steam. Once you have all four of those values in, it'll start crunching up those values and start spitting out dollar values for each one of those bad traps that we actually have. Okay? So what we can do is just highlight a group that we actually have. Okay? I'm going to choose this one right here because we actually have a few in here. Highlight the group, select the steam report, generate that report, and there will be a box that will actually pop up. I'm going to say steam to hit OK. We actually have a box that actually jumps at us here. This is going to be all the information that we can actually put into this Excel spreadsheet. Now, there can be a couple of things that we can actually exclude from this report. If you want to exclude the location description, maybe the system pressure, maybe the area that you were in. Any of these actually have a checkbox in there. It will be excluded from the report. But I'm going to show you everything that we actually have. So you basically hit OK. It's going to say it's been generated. And let me see. Let me do this one right here because this is actually one that I've been testing. This is the spreadsheet. I'm actually talking about the steam report. Okay, we have the inlet temperature and outlet temperature, and there is a correlation with pressure with the temperatures here. So anybody that understands steam, you guys know that there is a correlation between temperature and pressure within steam. Here's our orifice size. Now this is going to probably be the hardest part for you guys to really find out what size orifice that you actually have for that trap. Talking to some of the experts out in the field, if you don't know the orifice size, the most common orifice size that you actually have in most plants is basically 1/8 inch. So if you don't know what the orifice size is, you can always backtrack to the 1/8 inch, and then you can actually plug in those values into DMS to pull up this report. Now, once this report is actually popped up on your screen, the last thing that we have to do is actually go down here into our cost tab. If we hit our cost tab, we actually have an area where we can actually adjust our steam cost per 1,000 pounds since we're in the United States. Now, if we're over in Europe, obviously it's going to be in the metric, so it's going to be per ton. So over here, we can actually adjust it. I'm going to say it's $10 per 1,000 pounds for steam. If I hit enter, you can see that my total cost has been adjusted, and we can see that out of this report that we just created is costing us about almost $19,000 per year for steam loss. Now you can, over here on this operational time, you can adjust it if you know the operational times of the steam. If it's not running 24/7, you can readjust it to whatever value you feel is accurate, and it will adjust itself in this data tab down in here. So now, since I added $10 per 1,000 pounds, you can see that on my first trap that I've actually tested, it's costing us about just over $1,000 per year. Now, you can see that the percentages that we have here, the percentage column, the default that we actually have is 100 for blow-through, 100% blowing through leakage, and it's costing us on this trap right here almost $1,300. But this leak right here, the default will be 50%, and it'll give you a value for this one, for instance, will be just over $1,000 per year. But you can actually adjust the percentage if you want to. If you think that a leak is supposed to be less than 50%, you can backtrack it and say it's 40%. And if you hit enter, it'll readjust the cost down here. Same thing with blow through. Some guys will say, well, it's not always 100% blowing through. It could be 90% blowing through. And then you can actually hit enter, and you can see that the dollar value actually went down just a little bit. Okay. Now, for these test results, you literally have to physically go in there with your ultra probe and make contact on the downflow side of the trap to make sure it is cycling through. So you have to listen to it and see if it's actually opening and closing correctly. If you think that it's chattering, obviously it's leaking. Excuse me. You got to make sure that you're in DMS, and you got to let the program know right here in the record information. You got to let DMS know underneath this test results if it's leaking through or blowing through. Okay. If not, all other options, it'll just say it's okay, like we have right here, and it's not going to give you a value at all. So you physically have to go in there and listen to that trap to see if it actually opens and closes. And obviously with the ultra probes, you want to be on the downflow side of that trap to listen to the opening and closing of the trap correctly. And you can tell just by listening to it if it's chattering or if it's leaking through, blowing through, or if it's just okay. But you actually have to make contact, listen to that cycle, and see if it's actually okay or not. And then once you decide on that, you can plug it right into DMS saying it's leaking by, and it'll bring that information over to the spreadsheet. And then it'll start crunching up the numbers for you and it'll spit out a dollar value. Okay, so it's almost something similar to the leak surveys that we actually have for the leak application, but this is just for steam. I'm going to pause for a second, Maureen. I'm going to let you see, let me know if there's any questions out there for right now.
All right, we did actually get one when you were talking kind of towards the beginning of this section about the different versions of DMS, and so they're just wondering, if someone does see that they don't have the latest version, is there any concern about losing any of your data when you do the upgrade to a new version, or any kind of steps that they can take to ensure that everything goes smoothly?
Yeah, basically your database itself, like all your, it's basically a folder that actually has all your plants all your plants reside into. When you uninstall the program of DMS, it will not touch your database whatsoever, because your database is actually located in a whole different area on your computer. Or if your data is actually on the server, that's even better. Your database will not be affected when you do an uninstall of DMS and then reinstalling a brand new or newer version of DMS. Just an example, I just go to my start and go to my computer, go to my C drive. You can see here's my DMS plants. So if I open this up, here's the list of all my plants I actually have for that folder. So if I went ahead and uninstalled my program and reinstalled, installed a newer version of DMS, this folder, or this folder right here, will not be affected at all. So you don't have to worry about losing data whatsoever, because when you do the uninstallation of the older version and put a newer version on there, the plants will be safe.
All right, great. That's the only question so far. So we're good.
Okay, perfect. Now lastly, we have our famous leak reports. This is the most common report that everybody most commonly uses. We have our compressed air report, which is fairly new for the past couple of years, I think. The mixed gas report's been around for a long time. We also have a two-pick report that's fairly new too. It's about the same age as the compressed air. And obviously you got your standard alarm report and everything report. The alarm report will not be used. I haven't heard of anybody using an alarm report for leaks because, to be honest, a leak is an alarm. So if you listen to it, obviously you're going to want to try to fix it. So there's really no need to create an alarm report. Obviously the everything report is in there if you want to generate that. The two-pick report is basically a report that you can actually associate an image of the leak itself and put it onto a spreadsheet so that you can email it or print it out for somebody else. Basically what the two-pick report is, you can actually put two leaks, or basically two images of those two leaks, onto one sheet of paper. So what I mean is that if you have 100 leaks and you have 100 images for an image for each one of those 100 leaks, you will actually have 50 pages worth of these images and leaks on this report. I'll show you exactly what it is, or what it looks like. Obviously these aren't leaks, but I'm basically showing you guys what I mean. Basically I have two images on one sheet of paper. So basically this would be leak 1, this would be leak 2, and that's it. So if you're not going in there to actually, to fix those leaks, you can actually print this out or email to somebody so that he can print it out, so that so that he actually understands where to actually go to find this one particular leak. And you can have a comment box. Again, you can put up to 255 characters in this comment box. You can put down the date of when it's been repaired, and you can actually put your initials in there saying that it has been fixed. Again, two images on one sheet of paper. That's what the two-pick report actually looks like and what it means. The mixed compressed gas report and the compressed air report are the most common and the most widely used from everybody. This is the one that's been around for quite some time, the mixed compressed gas report. Basically what this report is, it has both your compressed air and all your specialty gases in there, so like your argon, nitrogen, hydrogen, helium, and so on. Anything that's under pressure will be created in this report. So what it does, we highlight our group name, basically a list of everything that's actually underneath this one particular area, okay? And it's going to extract it, and you do the same process, create a name for it, know exactly where that report's actually going, and your report will actually look like something like this. Now there's a lot of stuff going on in here. Okay, but in order for this report to work correctly, we have to know what the dB value is. Obviously, you're going to get that with your ultraprobe. Before I go any further about the dB values, when you actually do a leak survey, it doesn't matter if it's compressed air or if it's a mixed gas, once you isolate exactly where that leak is coming from, before you actually go ahead and record the dB value, you want to make sure that you pull that ultraprobe about 15 inches away from the source of the leak. If you don't, and if you're right on top of it, your dB value will actually increase considerably. Okay, so you want to back away about 15 inches. This report is actually is basically a conservative report. So if you back away, the dB value will actually drop a little bit. So you want to be very conservative with your readings, because if you're on top of every single one of these leaks, these numbers will actually explode. So that they're not going to be the true value of the leak itself. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So when you guys go out there to find those leaks, you want to make sure that you isolate to know exactly where that leak is coming from. And once you know exactly where that is, then back away about 15 inches away from the source of that leak, and then go ahead and record your dB value. So once we actually have the dB values in this column that we extracted from DMS and put into this report, the next thing that we have to know is knowing what the pressure is. So when you go out there and do a survey, you want to bring a little notepad and you want to write down on your first leak that you find, leak number 1, what the pressure is. So you look for a gauge and find out what the pressure is. This is a best estimate report, and this is the reason why. So when I actually highlight one of these cells underneath the pressure at leak, we have a drop-down box. If I hit that, we only have these values for pressure. So if we're dealing with something, let's say a pressure gauge telling us it's 97 pounds, PSI basically, we don't want to choose 100 PSI. We want to underscore that value. Because if we increase it, go to the next closest one, which is 100, it's going to change the value of the cost here. So it's going to overinflate the dollar value of that particular leak. Okay? So if I say 75 PSI, you can see that the value is just over $2,600. But if I look at the pressure gauge and it's telling me 97, and instead of me choosing 75 and choose 100, you can see that the dollar value jumped up about $500 per year. So you're going to overinflate the dollar values for each one of these leaks that you have actually found. Okay, so you always want to underscore the pressure so that you don't overinflate the dollar value. Now the last piece of the puzzle is your cost. The location is basically where you are. So I'm over here in New York. So I'm going to choose New York, and this will actually determine our greenhouse gases that we have actually found for the state of New York. Each state will be slightly different. Obviously, we have different countries in there too, Netherlands and stuff. We're always trying to add more of the greenhouse gases for every country out there. And then we actually have an electricity cost, and I'm going to say it's 12 cents per kilowatt hours. And once I hit enter, if you look at the air cost, you can see that it changed from 33 cents to 39 cents per 1,000 cubic feet. But we're not quite done yet. I've actually I found a bunch of air leaks, and I found a bunch of specialty gas leaks also. So I found a couple argon leaks. Last time I checked, I think argon was around $27 per 1,000 cubic feet. Helium is very expensive. Last time I checked on that was about $110 per 1,000 cubic feet. Hydrogen, I don't really recall. I'm going to say it's 16. And then this other cost, if you say you found a couple nitrogen leaks, you can actually change this other and change it to the name of nitrogen if you want to. And nitrogen will actually come over to the month tab. I'll show you here in a second. Nitrogen will be around, I'm going to say $5.60. Once you have all your values put into place, you can actually come in here and actually change the operational times. So if you know exactly how long, let's say for the compressors, if they're not running 24/7, you can adjust it to 12 hours, and if it's only running during the weekdays, you can just say maybe 288 days of the year that it runs. So you can get kind of try to get it as close as possible to the true number. Once you have all this stuff all actually plugged in, you can come back here to this month and year of the actual report, of the actual survey. You can see that some of these, like the type of gases, it'll recalculate the value for each one of these. So if you remember in the cost tab, I changed it from other to nitrogen. If I come over here to other, you can see that nitrogen is actually in there. So I can actually highlight that, and it'll change the other to nitrogen. So it'll recalculate those values and spit out a dollar value. And basically, it'll give you a rough estimate of the CFM, or the size of the leak out there for each individual leak that you actually find within that survey. So you just go through here and you just change the values. Like this helium leak is kind of usually on the low pressure side. I'm going to say it's 25. Air is going to be 75 here, and so on. So you just change these values, and all you have to do is just click in that cell, and you'll have that drop down. Now you can also change it. You can cheat the system a little bit. If all of them, let's say, are let's say 75 psi, we can come over here, highlight this cell of 75 psi, right-click, and you can actually copy this, and then you can go down, maybe the next few of them are actually 75 psi. Once I have this all highlighted in blue, you can right-click there, and you can actually, you can actually change this. Oops. Well, you're supposed to. Cancel. But you can actually go in the this cell right here and actually change these cells automatically for you. So instead of clicking on every single cell and changing it like this, they'll save you time that way. And then over here is the problem description. This will give you a quick glance of where that leak is actually present. So over here I just put down it was a quick release on an air gun. Over here we got a tank nozzle that's actually leaking. We got a valve at a tank that's actually leaking. And you can actually put in locations, you know, the area of the survey where these leaks are. We got a repaired. Let me move this out of the way so I can move this report up a little bit. There we go. The repair column here, we can actually go in here and repair these, and we can actually document all the stuff that we have actually repaired. So obviously when we actually look at this report, we're going to tackle all the big numbers first, the big dollar values. So obviously we're going to tackle this one right here, this argon leak, this argon leak, this argon leak right here. I'm going to say, Joe, go out there and repair these 3 leaks. Joe will go out there, fix them, and say, all right, Stan, I went ahead and fixed these. I'll document it saying that we actually repaired this. So all I have to do is go in here and highlight the cell, put in Y. If you look over here, this is a repair column. So right now, Joe told me that he repaired 2 of these leaks. I put in the Y's for these repairs, and it'll keep a running total of the repairs that we have actually done. And this is the grand total of the survey that we actually have found for this one particular survey. So it's costing us about $171,000 per year. So just out of those 2 leaks that Joe has actually just fixed, it accounts for about 30% of the grand total that he has actually repaired for us. So it'll keep a running total of all the stuff that we have actually repaired. And over here, it'll break it down even further of all the stuff that we have actually repaired concerning individual compressed gases. So we didn't fix any air leaks so far, but over here, we fixed about $65,000 for the argon leaks, which accounts for about 4.6 CFMs. And if we went ahead and repaired this helium leak, saying that we repaired that, you can see over here, the CFM value that we fixed so far was 0.4, and it was a total of about $23,000. And again, it'll keep a running total of the repairs. And if we repaired that one, it accounted for 52%. So just out of these 3 leaks that we have actually fixed, out of the, I think it was 120 leaks that we have actually found in the survey, it counts for just over half of the total amount that we're actually losing. Okay, so you can keep track of every little detail that you want in here. And then lastly, we have our greenhouse gases. So we have the energy avoidance, basically our electricity for running that or those compressors, the greenhouse gases that we have avoided if we fix these leaks. Obviously, the NA is not going to be available for the argon because or the helium or nitrogen for that matter, because they're actually already tanked. So we're not producing that. So it's already been stored, and we're just using that. And then on this last total, this last column, we have a grand total of CFM found within this survey. So out of all these leaks that we have actually found, we found about 107.2 CFMs. Okay. The other report, the newer report, is our compressed air report. So if you're just going out there to find just air leaks, you can actually just use this report right here itself. Again, just generate the report, create a name for it, and it'll actually create this type of report. It's going to be very similar to the compressed mixed gas, but it's a little bit more condensed on some of the stuff that we actually have because we don't have the mixed gases in there. But we also have a few more, newer columns that we actually have in here. Okay, we have our dB values that we collect with our ultra probe. We can adjust the pressure if we know what the pressures are. We can readjust it there. The type of gas, you're not going to be able to change that because this is a compressed air report. The cost tab is a little bit more condensed. You just pick the location where you are, choose the electricity that you actually are paying for, and it'll readjust the cost per 1,000 cubic feet. You got the operational time you can readjust. And for this capturable rate, these are for people that really understand their compressors. Basically, they know how efficient their compressors are. If you know the efficiency, like if you got a VFD, a variable speed drive, for a compressor, usually they're around 90%. You can actually type in 90%, saying that you can capture 90% of the total amount. If you don't know what the efficiency is, just leave it at 100. Okay? And once you have that all done and established, just go back here to your month and year tab. And it's costing, out of this one little survey, it's costing us just under $20,000. You got the problem description. You can type in exactly where the leak is again. Here is your greenhouse gases identified. The total CFMs for that survey that we actually found that is leaking. And we got a repair, and then we got a percentage. So if we repair some of these, we can do the same thing. Just highlight it, highlight the cell, change it to Y, and it'll keep a running total of everything that we have actually repaired. Now there's a couple new things, new columns in here. We have difficulty of repair or repair difficulty column. If we hit this cell, we have a drop-down box ranging from 1 through 5. Now depending on how you want to set this up, I usually have 1 being the most easiest repair, 5 being the most difficult. So I can actually come in here and change some of these values. If I know it's going to be an easy fix, I'm going to leave it as 1. If I think that there's going to be, it's going to take some time to actually fix this one particular leak, I'm going to make it a 5. Also, we have a safety issue column. If there's safety involved, if you think that it's in a dangerous situation, you can actually say into this cell, yes, there is a safety issue here, so you can let the person that's going to be doing the repair know what he's getting himself into, and he can take the proper steps to try to make it more safe to repair that. If he has to shut down the machine to get to a hose to fix, replace a line or whatever, he can take the necessary steps to repair that leak. Repair by, you can put down the initials of the person that actually did the repairs, the repair date. The work order schedule number is basically the same thing as a compressed gas report that we actually have just previously that I showed you. You can put a work order in there. And then you get the individual costs for each leak. And then we basically got roughly the size of the leaks themselves in CFMs. If you're in Europe, obviously it's not going to be CFMs, it's going to be LPMs, it's going to be liters per minute. And then you got your energy avoidance and electricity, and then you got your greenhouse gases avoidance right here. Now, these other reports, these other tabs in this report, we have a report tab. You don't want to just go ahead and print this out and give it to your bosses because it's going to be overwhelming. You want to try to make it as simple as possible so that they would actually understand real quickly what you're doing. We have a condensed version of the report. If we hit this, here's the condensed version. Okay, it'll give us a total amount of CFMs that we have actually found in the survey, the total amount of dollars in the survey, how much we actually repaired, and it'll give us a percentage of the stuff that we actually repaired. You can actually put multiple months in here. So if we went ahead and did another survey today for January, we can actually put a January in there, and it'll keep a running total of both December and January in here. And this is going to be the same as the compressed mixed gas report. The focus area I'm not going to get into because this is something that we're working on. We just basically put it in there so that I would remember to discuss this with other people to incorporate. So this is going to be something that's going to be in the future, this focus area. But this other area here is your compressed, actually you got the leaks repaired here, sorry, and then we got our greenhouse gases that we have actually identified. Okay. So the tab right here, the master actually is just a blank sheet. So if you don't want to use a notepad, you can actually print this out if you want to, and you can just take it along with you, and you can actually type in, what the pressure is in here for these individual leaks, the type of gas. If it's, a specialty gas, you can actually type in argon if you want in here. So you can print this out and take it with you. The flow rate chart is standard. This has always been here. It's just a guideline. And then our coefficient tables for electricity coefficients. Obviously, if you can look through here, they're all going to be different from state to state. And basically, greenhouse gases are going to be different for each state also. So there's a lot of stuff in here that you guys can actually do. So basically, we give you guys a lot of ammo to present to your bosses to get whatever it is that needed to be done fairly quickly. So basically, the more evidence that you have to present to your bosses, the easier it is for you to get what you want done. Lastly, we have our custom reports and SQL reports. If you're very efficient with Excel reports, you can come in here and then actually modify a lot of these reports, or create your own report basically in Excel or even in an SQL report. And you can actually save that, and you can always load up those custom reports. So if there's something that's not in here that you like and you create one, you can actually load up that same report over and over again so that you can use it over and over again. And that is it, Maureen. Is there any questions out there, guys? I know I pushed a lot onto you guys, but I hope that you guys understand.
Yeah, actually only one question just came in regarding the greenhouse gas section. They just kind of missed that, so I don't know if it's easy for you to just kind of quick cover that again, or if it's easier to meet with this person offline.
I mean, I can talk to them over offline if you want, but basically it's just the greenhouse gases. Everything's all about carbon credits now, for the most part. I mean, people will use carbon credits to sell to other people, basically. For us, the maintenance guys, we really don't care. This is basically just for the upper management. They know exactly what they're looking at and know what to do with these things. You can actually keep the running total of all the greenhouse gases for each individual leak. For this one particular leak, it's costing, for electricity, it's costing us just over 3,500 kilowatts per hour. So if we fix that, we save that much electricity, and we avoided this much greenhouse gases, the carbon dioxide, the nitrogen dioxide, and sulfur, and so on. So you can keep a running total. These columns right here, the maintenance guys, and myself included, we don't care about this. We basically care about these numbers right here, the dollar values. These numbers over here are something for the engineers and the upper management. They'll understand what to do with these numbers, and that's basically it. If if that person wants, he can always call me up and I can go into further detail. But for the maintenance guys and myself included, we really don't care about these columns right here. These are basically geared more towards the upper management team.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through, but as Stan mentioned, obviously we're always happy to answer those offline. I'll have our contact information up here in a second. So thanks, Stan. I'm just going to take the screen back from you real quick, and I've got just a couple important dates that I wanted to show you all before we end for today. So up on our screen here, just some upcoming dates. We've got the next section of our online software training is going to be on Spectralizer, actually. So we're kind of moving on to our other software program, and that's going to be Tuesday, February 11th at 1 o'clock Eastern. So look for invitations for that. Then actually next weekend, or next Wednesday rather, we've got a webinar where we're going to be previewing the various topics that are going to be covered at our upcoming Reliable Asset World Conference. So we've got Sean Eisenhower from Allied Reliability is going to be talking about the different topics that are going to be covered, why those are so important, and how paying attention to those things are going to help all of us have a more successful 2014. And then, of course, we've got the conferences themselves, Ultrasound World, co-located with our new Reliable Asset World, May 13 through 16 in Clearwater, Florida. And I don't know about all of you, but the idea of being in Florida, where it's nice and warm, sounds really great right now in the middle of January. So mark your calendars, and with that, I'm going to pop our contact information up here and let you all go and enjoy the rest of your day. And this is how you guys get in touch with us if you've got questions to follow up on this session. But thanks again, Stan, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, guys.